Every morning, Arjun's alarm rang at exactly 6 a.m. It didn't need to be loud. By now, the sound had carved itself into his mind like a daily command. Wake up, repeat, survive. Before he even put his feet on the floor, he was already exhausted by the sheer hypnotic monotony of his own life. Corporate culture conditions employees to see life as a simple exchange. You trade your daylight for the promise of financial security. You give away your time to deadlines and endless unread emails, and in return, you receive a paycheck and a life that looks stable on the outside, but feels like a cage on the inside. So when Arjun discovered the stock market, he didn't see numbers. He saw an escape route. On his first trade, as those green bars pushed higher, he experienced a rush of pure adrenaline. He made a small profit, but more importantly, he felt a sudden electric surge of control that his 9-to-5 had never offered. But the desperation to break free from a rigid, soul-crushing schedule leaves you perfectly primed for a different kind of trap. When you trade to escape your life, you stop following rules and start chasing a feeling. Arjun applied his office logic directly to the market. In a corporate environment, if you work harder and complete more tasks, you get ahead. He assumed that taking more trades meant more chances to make a profit. One trade quickly became 5. 5 trades blurred into 10. This triggered a psychological spiral where initial calculated risks devolved into frantic attempts to recover small losses. When a trade went against him, his immediate response was to force another one, trying to fight the market to get his money back. This graph tracks Arjun's account balance during a session. It starts with small dips, but as trades became more frequent and emotional, the math caught up. Losses accelerated, plummeting in jagged drops that wiped out nearly all of his capital in a single afternoon. Arjun discovered that the same relentless energy that made him successful at his job was exactly what was destroying his account. In the financial markets, the harder you struggle to force an outcome, the faster you ensure a failure. Everything changed when Arjun met a veteran trader in a local cafe, a man who operated with absolute, unbothered stillness. While Arjun was hyperactive and stressed, this mentor sat with a level of calm that seemed impossible given the volatility on his screen. Arjun watched him observe a highly promising market setup, but the mentor didn't click. He waited, and when the setup failed, he sipped his coffee without ever moving his hand toward the mouse. To him, staying out of a bad trade was as much of a victory as winning a good one. The mentor gave Arjun a blunt diagnosis. His account wasn't bleeding because he lacked technical knowledge. His problem was a toxic, uncontrollable compulsion to act, a belief that he had to be doing something to be productive. Adopting the one-trade system meant Arjun had to face a reality more difficult than any chart: the psychological endurance required to sit with the extreme discomfort of doing absolutely nothing. To replace that compulsion with logic, Arjun was introduced to the setup trinity. This is an emotionless filter.
A potential trade must pass through this system entirely before a single dollar is ever put at risk. This diagram illustrates the 3 alignment requirements. First, the background, which verifies the overall direction of the market trend. Second, the signal, identifying the precise timing of the opportunity. And third, the entry, confirming the exact price location. Only when all 3 converge do you reach the valid trade zone in the center. There is a strict veto rule applied here. If even one of those 3 elements slides out of alignment, the trade is voided. It doesn't matter how promising it feels. The system requires you to stay on the sidelines. Once a trade is approved, you apply the 1% risk rule. Look at this circle representing your total trading capital. You are only allowed to expose this one tiny, isolated slice on any single trade. Protecting your capital so you can survive the inevitable losing streaks is more important than trying to grow the account quickly. Finally, the system uses an emotionless exit strategy. By setting automated stop losses and trailing systems in advance, the trader removes the human element from the anxiety of when to sell. The machine handles the exit, whether the trade is a win or a loss. This mechanical system provides the technical logic needed to identify a statistical edge, but its ultimate purpose is to serve as a guardrail, protecting the trader from the very human impulses that tend to ignore that logic. Learning these rules is the easy part.
Living them requires a grueling psychological rewiring process. To build the unnatural habit of extreme behavioral restraint, Arjun began a 21-day test. The early days were a struggle. On day 1, Arjun executed a perfectly valid trade, but the market reversed and hit his stop loss. In the past, he would have doubled down. Now, he had to simply close the laptop and walk away for the rest of the day. The test intensified on day 5. Arjun took a highly profitable trade, but he had entered slightly early, breaking one of his structural rules. Despite the profit, his mentor forced him to cross out his progress and reset the entire tracker back to day 1. Through daily journaling, Arjun's focus began to shift. He stopped obsessing over his account balance and started obsessing over his behavior. Success was no longer a dollar amount. It was a checklist of rules followed without exception. This process requires redefining victory itself. A winning day is no longer determined by the market's movement, but by the trader's ability to execute the system flawlessly. Weeks later, Arjun's morning routine had completely changed. He woke up naturally, without the jolt of an alarm. When he finally looked at his charts, he felt completely unmoved by the market's inherent chaos. The reactive patterns that once drove him were replaced by a clinical focus. He executed his process with the detachment of a machine, regardless of what the headlines or his emotions were saying. True financial and temporal freedom are never bought with constant hustle or frantic action. They're the reward of mastering the discipline to sit still, wait for the right moment, and do exactly one thing perfectly, and nothing more.